Greetings, curious viewers. Today we're embarking on a fascinating journey through time to delve into the world of ancient Egypt and learn all about hairstyles. Yes, you heard right. In this amazing world of pharaohs, pyramids, and mysterious hieroglyphs, even hair had its history and significance. Prepare to see not just well-groomed locks, but an entire system of symbols reflecting social status, age, profession, and even the religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. We'll uncover the secrets of the most fashionable trends of that time, find out why wigs were a real must-have, and how ordinary Egyptians differed in their hairstyles from noble dignitaries and the pharaoh himself. Exciting facts await us about how these intricate hairstyles were created, what materials were used for fixing and adorning hair, and why certain headdresses were not just accessories but a sign of power and might. So, make yourselves comfortable, and let's immerse ourselves together in this amazing world of ancient Egyptian hairstyles, from simple braids to luxurious wigs worthy of the gods. So, friends, the first thing that will probably surprise us is the widespread use of wigs. Yes, you heard right. Wigs were an integral part of life for both men and women, regardless of their social standing. Although, of course, the quality and complexity of wigs varied significantly. Why were wigs so popular? Firstly, it was practical. In the hot climate, shaving the head helped avoid overheating and hygiene problems, such as the spread of lice. Wigs, on the other hand, protected from the scorching sun while maintaining a respectable appearance. Secondly, wigs were a symbol of status and fashion. Wealthy Egyptians could afford elaborate, skillfully made wigs from natural human hair, often supplemented with woven gold threads, beads, and other ornaments. The more voluminous and complex the wig, the higher the wearer's position in society. The poorer segments of the population wore simpler wigs made from plant fibers, animal hair, or even dyed hair. Let's take a closer look at men's hairstyles. In the early periods, men often shaved their heads, sometimes leaving a small lock of hair, especially in children, the so-called lock of youth. Later, short, neatly trimmed hair or wigs became popular. Nobles and pharaohs wore longer and more complex wigs, often with multiple layers of curls. Beards also had significance. Although a clean-shaven face was considered the norm, pharaohs and high-ranking officials often wore ceremonial false beards, which were a symbol of power and masculinity. These beards could be straight or braided and were attached to the chin with a cord. As for women's hairstyles, there was a real variety. Women usually wore long hair, which they carefully styled and adorned. Long, straight hair with a central parting, as well as wavy curls and intricate braids, were popular. Often, the hair was braided into numerous thin braids, which could then be gathered into more complex shapes. Women's wigs were true works of art. They could be very voluminous, with many curls, braids, and twists. The so-called Nubian style, characterized by a V-shaped wig line on the forehead, was particularly popular during the New Kingdom. Wigs were often decorated with flowers, ribbons, gold pendants, and beads, making them not just part of the hairstyle, but a true piece of jewelry. It is interesting to note that hair care was an important part of daily life for the ancient Egyptians. They used various vegetable oils such as castor, almond, and olive oil to moisturize and add shine to their hair. Beeswax and resins were used to fix hairstyles, and henna was used for dyeing, especially to cover gray hair. Archaeological finds, such as combs made of ivory and wood, hairpins, mirrors, and even containers for storing hair care products, testify to the importance attached to appearance and hair condition. So, as you can see, hairstyles in ancient Egypt were not just a matter of aesthetics. They were an entire layer of culture, reflecting social hierarchy, religious beliefs, and the fashion trends of that time. From practical shaved heads to luxurious wigs adorned with gold, each hairstyle told its own story. All right, let's trace the fascinating evolution of hairstyles in ancient Egypt throughout its long history. After all, fashion, as we know, is changeable, and the ancient Egyptians were no exception. Let's begin with the early dynastic period, c. 3100 to 2686 BCE. In this early period, when Upper and Lower Egypt were just unified, hairstyles were relatively simple. Both men and women often wore short hair or even shaved their heads. This was probably due to the hot climate and practical hygiene considerations. Nevertheless, some differences could already be observed. Some men left small tufts of hair on their foreheads, while women sometimes wore a simple bob or several braids. Wigs in this period were likely less common and had a simpler form. During the Old Kingdom, this 686 to 181 BCE, with the strengthening of the state and the development of culture, hairstyles became more diverse. Men began to wear long, straight hair with a central parting or braids, which could be wrapped around the head. More complex wigs also appeared, although they were still relatively simple compared to later periods. Women also wore their hair long, often braided into numerous thin braids. During this period, wigs with elaborate curls and braids began to appear, which could be adorned with simple beads or headbands. During the Middle Kingdom, c. 2055 to 1650 BCE, there was a further development in hairdressing. The use of wigs became even more widespread, especially among the nobility. Men increasingly preferred shorter, more natural wigs, although long hair and braids were still seen. Women's hairstyles remained complex, with an emphasis on curls, braids, and twists. Wigs became more voluminous and skillfully crafted. New ways of styling and decorating hair appeared, reflecting the growing wealth and influence of Egypt. New Kingdom, Dahar 1550-1070 BCE. This was the Golden Age of Egypt, a period of flourishing art and culture, which, of course, was reflected in hairstyles. Both men and women wore long, flowing wigs, which became true works of art. Intricate curls, numerous braids, and elaborate weaves were characteristic features of the hairstyles of this time. Wigs were often decorated with gold threads, precious stones, flowers, and ribbons. The Nubian style, which we have already mentioned, with its characteristic V-shaped line on the forehead created by the wig or the styling of natural hair, became particularly popular among women. Men also wore longer and more elaborate wigs, and ceremonial beards acquired even more refined forms. Late period, c. 1070 to 332 BCE, and Ptolemaic period, 332 to 30 BCE. In these later periods, Egyptian fashion was influenced by other cultures, such as the Greeks. Nevertheless, traditional Egyptian hairstyles and wigs were still in use, although new elements could appear. For example, in the Ptolemaic era, one can see depictions of women with softer, wavier hairstyles reminiscent of Greek styles. Thus, we see that over the millennia, hairstyles in ancient Egypt underwent a significant evolution. From simple and practical in the early periods to incredibly complex and luxurious in the New Kingdom era, they always remained an important element of culture, reflecting the social, economic, and cultural changes in ancient Egyptian society. Studying this transformation allows us to better understand the dynamics of the development of this great civilization.